Hey, it's Kate. I'm back with another tutorial. Today I'm showing you how I attach a yarn hairstyle on a doll that I call the Lily Bell, and I just love this hairstyle. It always turns out so cute, and I'm really excited to show you. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my doll and I'm going to measure the top half of her head pretty much from ear to ear, and it's about 5 inches. And then I'm going to mark that distance on a piece of paper, and I'm going to sew my yarn to that piece of paper, keeping it right between those two lines. And I know a lot of people use a book to wrap their yarn around. I just am impatient and I just wrap it around my elbow, and it always turns out to be the right length for me, so it goes really fast, and that's how I like to do it. But so I'm going to sew 3 passes across the middle of this bunch of yarn, and I'm just finger combing to straighten it out a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I'm going to press as I go and just allow the yarn to spread out naturally. Sometimes I'll have to add a few more pieces to the end, but it always turns out great for me. And I'm gonna make a very embarrassing uh, confession right now. I recorded probably half of this tutorial in slow-mo. Not kidding. And so I had to speed a lot of it up, and this is the only part that does this, but it kind of makes the camera shake. So I'm going to show you this first pass, and then I'm going to try to skip through the shaking camera for you guys, but I'm just straightening it out a little bit. I kept the needle down and turned it, and then I'm going back across, and I'm going to turn it one more time. And this is the last pass, and then I'll just do a back stitch once I reach the end. And since we did 3 passes, that paper is going to tear right off. And I just trimmed the little thread tail, and I'm ready to pin it onto my doll. So what I do is I kind of get it situated a little bit. I part it to kind of see where her face is, and then I'll pin it on each end of that hairline, and I'm pinning it basically right on the seam of the side of the head. So now that I have that pinned, I'm going to part it where I want. You can do a little side part or just right down the middle, and then I'll situate it exactly where I want it and pin that in place. I always try to use bright colored pins because you do not want a pin getting lost or forgotten in your doll hair. So I'm going to measure to show you. It's a little less than 1 inch from the brow to the hairline, so if you're wanting an exact measurement, that's pretty close. So now I'm going to use the same color yarn as my thread to sew on this yarn hair, and I'm using a very long needle. I'll say it every time, please be careful using a very long needle. I'm not going to give you the details, but it can be dangerous, trust me. Don't pull it towards your face. But I'm just going to tuck the knot right behind that seam and come in at the bottom of one end of that hairline. And I'm just going to back stitch once just to make sure the end there is sewn down securely. And then I'm basically going to wrap the yarn thread around that white seam as I go. So I'm going back before that last stitch and then coming out after it. I guess it's kind of a back stitch, kind of a stem stitch, call it what you will, but you're kind of backtracking each time to make sure it's securely sewn on. And in the process, you're doing it kind of at a diagonal. So you're going in on one side of the hairline and coming out on the other, and that kind of wraps it around that seam a little bit. Alright, and coming to the end here, I'm going to do the same thing I did when I started. I'm just going to do one more stitch, just really securing the end of that seam well, and I'll tie it off. And that tail, I'll just leave it the same length as the other hair, so it'll just blend in with the yarn hair. Okay, now we're going to do the center part. So I'm going to do another 50 loops around my elbow. And I'll just cut one end of that. And I'm not going to measure this time. I'm just going to sew this right down the middle and keep it as compact as I can. 3 passes again. And that's just going to pull right off the paper. So this will be our center part. And it should make kind of a T with the weft that you just attached. So you can see one end of that part is sitting right on the part that we already made. And I'm going to pin that in place. Say hi to my little fox. It's my favorite pin cushion. My daughter made it. And now I'm just finding a little spot to insert my needle, and that will stay hidden. And I'm coming right out at the beginning of that part. And I'm again doing a back stitch just to make sure that end is really secure. It's kind of an anchor stitch. And then I'm doing the same thing I did before. And I used white thread here so that you could see the center part, but you can use brown thread to sew your weft together, and that will stay hidden a lot more easily. Okay, and I'm getting towards the end here, and I just put in a couple of extra stitches to make sure it's secure. That's one thing I strive for, is very secure, thick doll hair. I love that, and every kid loves a doll with thick hair, and you don't want it falling out. So that's why I sew it with the machine before I attach it and do the back stitch, and all of it just comes together to give you a very secure hairdo for your doll. So again, I'm just tying it off, and I'm leaving the remainder as part of the hair. And I'm kind of just going to smooth out and finger comb the hair, and I'm grabbing a little bunch right at the top of the part, and I'm going to separate out a few strands at the front just to be some pretty little wispies. And I'm just finger combing and trying to straight out the yarn before I pin the hairstyle in place. And you can see those are the pieces that I left loose. Now I'm going to pin this hairstyle in place, and I'm going to start the curve right at the nose level. This is fiddly, you know, doll hair, it is fiddly, y'all. And so just again, take your time. There's no rush. We want it to be just how we want it, and the best way to accomplish that is slow and steady. And I think it's Cara Bunton that I heard say, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I just love that. It's my motto. But I'm using 2 pins to pin those last two spots in place just to have it secure. And I'm just coming in with my needle, and the hair will hide that knot. So and you can just see right where those wispies begin is where the first stitch comes out, and I'm going to stitch this on a diagonal to kind of go with the twist of this hair. So I'm coming in underneath and going back in on top a little farther down the twist, so that just blends in with the twist. You can see that happening there. Then my second stitch will go in right on this curve. And come out a little farther down the twist. So each stitch is just blending in with that twist nicely and kind of creating a neat effect as you go. And I'm kind of testing to see where I should put my next stitch. And I'm going all the way to the very middle of the back of the head. Now I can take all my needles out. And I'll put that last stitch in and go up to start the other side. And now I'm going to finger comb the other side and just repeat the whole process. You're already starting to see the cuteness. We're seeing the effect and I'm loving it. So we're just doing the same thing on the other side, grabbing a small bunch of hair right at the part. And you really get to decide how big you want your twist to be. You know, you might want a very small piece of hair for the twist or a bigger one. So that's the beauty of creating. I'm pinning it in place now. And like I've said before, yarn, thread, it all has a mind of its own. It's never going to be exactly the same every time. That's handmade, you know, so don't stress. It's going to be its own unique creation and it's going to be great. And I'm going back to the middle of that second twist before I tie it off. So I'll come in at the top of the twist and then come out under the hair, just right above the neck. This is not easy. So just like I said, take it slow. It is fiddly. See, even I'm having a little trouble getting in there with the needle, but we want that knot hidden under there as much as possible. All right, and we are done. And this is definitely my go-to hairstyle. It's my favorite one. I've used it so many times and I just love how it turns out every time. So I hope you enjoyed another tutorial and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye.